Hello everyone, welcome back to Making Strategy Work, Worked in School publication, and this is video 4. We're continuing back where we stopped last time. It was about Warden Executive Education Survey and then Warden Gartner Survey. This was a joint project, the Gartner Survey. It was a joint project involving the Gartner Group, International Corporation, a well-known research organization, and me, Wharton professor. This is a relatively recent project with data collection analysis in 2003. Now, the purpose of the research from the Gartner introduction was as follows. Now, to gain a clear understanding of challenges faced by managers as they make decisions and take actions to execute their company's strategy to gain competitive advantage. Now, this research instrument was a short online survey sent to 1,000 individuals on the Gartner ePanel database. The targeted sample comprised managers who reported that they were involved in strategy formulation and execution. Complete unable responses were received from a sample of 243 individuals, a return rate that is more than sufficient for this type of research. In addition, the survey collected responses to open-ended questions to provide additional data, including explanations of items covered in the survey instrument. Now, there were 12 items on the survey dealing with obstacles to the strategy execution process, and they focused on conditions that affect execution and were originally developed in conjunction with Wharton Executive Development Program on strategy implementation. Now, let's briefly consider this program and the survey it generated, and then we'll look at the items involved. Wharton Executive Education Survey. I've been running an executive program on strategy implementation at Wharton a number of times a year for about 20 years. I have met hundreds of managers with responsibility for strategy execution, many of whom confronted major hurdles in their attempts to execute strategy successfully. Now, as part of the formal program, managers brought their real-world problems with them. Time was allocated to air out the problems and focus on their solution in the course of the program. Now, based on these presentations, in my discussions with managers, I developed a list of execution hurdles and challenges to the execution process. I discussed this list with managers, asking them to rank the problems or obstacles in order of importance. Over time, items were modified, added to, or deleted from the list until I settled on 12 items that made sense and had face validity. Now, these items managers felt clearly had a relationship to strategy execution. Using the 12 items to gather opinions over a large number of executive education programs provided me with responses from a sample of 200 managers. They provided a ranking of the items' impact on strategy execution, open-ended responses to questions about execution issues, problems, and opportunities were also collected over time, providing additional valuable data. Coupled with the data collected in the Wharton Gartner survey using the same 12 items, I had complete responses from more than 400 managers involved in strategy execution who told me about their execution problems and their solutions to them. Now, panel discussions in subsequent Wharton Executive Program after the data collection, I held informal panel discussions to collect additional insights into what the data were actually saying. I asked managers why, in their opinion, people respond in the way they did. What are the surveys telling us about execution problems or issues was the predominant question. These discussions forced managers to read between the lines and interpret the formal data. They also enabled me to probe into what could be done to overcome the obstacles and achieve successful execution outcomes. Now, the insights were collected then not only on the source of execution problems, but their solutions as well. Now, the surveys and follow-up discussions provided data right from the horse's mouth. There were not idiosyncratic data, opinions or observations of a few managers or CEOs who, against all odds, did it their way. The number of managers providing answers, coupled with an emphasis on real problems and solutions, added a strong sense of relevance to the opinions gathered about strategy execution. Now, the results. Opinions about successful strategy You can check with the first. There's a table here, but I'm just gonna try to explain it all in all and say the very top number ranking uh, on both surveys of obstacles. There are 8 obstacles that got the top ranking. Now, there's inability to manage change effectively or overcome internal resistance to change. Now, try and execute a strategy that conflicts with the existing power structure. And then there is poor or inadequate information sharing between individuals or business units responsible for strategy execution. There's unclear communication of responsibility and/or accountability for execution decisions or actions, and there's a poor or vague strategy, lack of feeling of ownership of a strategy or execution plans among key employees, and not having guidelines or a model to guide strategy execution efforts. And then finally, there's the lack of understanding of the role of organizational structure in design and execution process. And it's obvious that there is a strong agreement on some of the items. The importance of managers change well, including cultural change, is first on both surveys. Inability to manage change effectively clearly is seen as injurious to strategy execution efforts. Although culture was not mentioned explicitly in items, the open-ended responses in panel discussions place culture at the core of many change-related problems. Too many of the respondents' change and culture change were synonymous. In trying to execute a strategy that conflicts with a prevailing power structure clearly is doomed to failure. According to the manager's survey, confronting those with the influence plan, with influence at different organizational levels who disagree with an execution plan surely will have unhappy results in most cases. Now, poor sharing of information or poor knowledge transfer and unclear responsibility and accountability also can doom strategy execution attempts. Now, these 2 items suggest that attempts at coordination or integration across organizational units can suffer if unclear responsibilities and poor sharing of vital information needed for execution is the rule. Now, again, this makes sense because complex strategies often demand cooperation and effective coordination and information sharing. Now, not achieving the requisite knowledge transfer and integration certainly cannot help the execution of these strategies. There is also agreement on the importance of some of the items. Both survey groups clearly agreed that a lack of upper management support and insufficient financial resources were not major problems for strategy execution in their organizations. And these results were extremely surprising, so I pursued them further. Now, presenting these results to managers in the panel discussion helped clarify the findings. Basically, the story is that top management support and adequate financial resources are absolutely critical, but that support is primarily manifested during a planning stage. When deciding on execution plans and methods, commitment to plans of actions and commitment of resources occur as part of planning. So they are given predetermined inputs to the execution process. Execution plans and activities already have the blessing and approval of top management and commitment of the requisite resources that has already been made. Now, occasionally, top management may wrench on its support during execution, but managers said that this was the exception, not the rule. Now, this explains then why the items dealing with financial support and top management buy-in were rated as only minor execution problems, not serious obstacles, and the issues related to support and commitment had already been confronted and resolved according to the managers interviewed. They definitely are saying, however, that had the blessing of top management not being attained, execution success would be far less probable, if not impossible, to achieve, given that buy-in and financial support were a reality and in place. The focus could turn to other execution tasks and activities. Now, it is important to note too that top management and financial support are seen by managers as difficult, as different issues than the power issue previously reported as significant for execution. Power has a broader and more persuasive influence than financial allocations, although there clearly is some relationship. Even after the approval of an execution project and the attendant budget allocations, power and social influence come into play and can affect execution. Managers were adamant in their opinion that while power certainly includes elements of hierarchy and budgeting, power differences are deeper, more complex, and permeate the entire organization, regardless of hierarchical level. Now, there are some differences between managers and the two surveys on a few of the items. Having a poor or vague strategy, for example, was ranked as the second biggest execution obstacle by the Wharton Executive Education Group, but it was ranked fifth by the Wharton Gartner managers. Not having a model or guidelines to guide strategy execution efforts now was ranked as the second biggest obstacle by the Executive Education Group, but was seventh in the Wharton Gartner survey. There were also small perceived differences on the importance of organizational structure or design in the execution process. Now, why the differences? It may be due to be part of the makeup of samples in the two surveys. The Wharton Gartner survey tapped the opinions of managers, some of whom can infer some successful in execution and some of whom were not. Now, surely some of the individuals sampled were successful in their implementation efforts, meaning they were not having problems. In contrast, many of the managers in the executive education surveyed attended this Wharton program because they were having actual execution problems. Now, they came to the program to help solve them and to overcome real implementation obstacles. Now, their focus was clearly on writing or avoiding execution mistakes. They could see problems, say, with organizational structure or not having a model to guide execution efforts, whereas managers in the Wharton Gartner survey may have already overcome those problems and hence rank them lower in importance. Now, whatever the reason, there were some differences between the two groups. Now, when it comes to poor execution outcomes, we could say that there was strong agreement between the research groups on the impact of the execution problems on performance results. In addition, not achieving desired execution outcomes or objectives, managers in the surveys ranked a few additional results of poor execution methods as being highly problematical. Now, these include the following. Employees don't understand how their jobs contribute to important execution outcomes, and a second, it goes time and money are wasted because of inefficiency or bureaucracy in the execution process. And a third poor outcome would be execution decisions taking too long to make. And then finally, the company reacts slowly or inappropriately to competitive pressures. Now, these are not trivial issues. Execution problems can cost the organization dearly. Time and money are wasted, and a company can face serious competitive setbacks because of an inability to respond to market or customer demand. Now, executive problems must be addressed, but which ones and in what order? That's where we can just follow on next video. So thank you for following up. See you next time, or at least you can hear from us next time. Have a good day.